Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We gather here today in the midst of a very great darkness that has descended upon our nation, and not just our nation, all nations. It's been by far the biggest challenge we've faced in a generation. We knew it was coming, but not when, and not what its clinical characteristics would be. We trained to face it. How we have all responded to it has been a defining moment for us as individuals, but as a nation too. We have all been involved. We have had no choice about dealing with it, but we had a choice about how we did. In the last few weeks, the darkness that has engulfed us all has been emotional, economic, and extensive. It has been illuminated, though, by a million points of light. The response from the British people has been immense. People in all our communities performing selfless, heroic acts, stoic, disciplined, kind. From now Colonel Tom to our health and care workers, our scientific and tech community, businesses, those who came out of retirement, critical workers, volunteers and the public, who through their resolve have reduced the rate of infection and sent this virus into decline. People have faced this with personal courage and often good cheer, and I pay tribute to their resilience with pride. This virus called forth the question of who we are, and that question was answered for families, for parents, for children, for communities, for the nation. It has illuminated our values and our strengths, that we chose to prioritise lives, that we chose to support businesses and jobs, that so many stepped up and volunteered, that we pulled together in times of crisis, and the validation of a devolved but national health service, free at the point of use, not linked to your employment, our NHS. It has shown what we believe in and how much we value the actions of so many who are taking on a greater share of the risk to protect us all and defeat the virus, including, I'm very proud to say, some members of this House of Commons who are working in health or as first responders. That when united in a national effort, the British people are a powerful force. It has also shown our fragility, the structural and funding complexity of social care, the invisibility of some of those in care settings, mental health, those with learning or behavioural disabilities, as well as older people, the lack of resilience in supplies of equipment when faced with a crisis of global proportions, the obstacles to provide support to some of our most entrepreneurial people, the challenges to get the world working together when nations are all so focused at home. This debate offers us parliamentarians the opportunity not just to scrutinise what has happened and the next steps in our response, but also how we can continue to improve our resilience and adapt to what will be fundamental changes in the way we live our lives. This is without doubt an inflection point for our country and the world, and we all need to rise to those challenges. We all have a role to play in finding solutions and answers. This debate affords us the opportunity to remember and mourn all those who have lost their lives to this disease, and think of those who are grieving without comfort, in some cases without having said goodbye. The reported death toll stands at 31,855 souls. Our thoughts, too, must be with those who have survived COVID, but also whose health has been impaired as a consequence, and to acknowledge those who have had to put their treatment and therapy for other conditions on hold because the NHS would not have been able to cope unless they did. The full cost of that sacrifice has yet to be counted. In particular, I think it is right that we acknowledge all those working in health and care who have succumbed to the disease. In full knowledge of the risks, they chose to work in the front line to save lives and to give comfort to others, to provide care to those in their charge. The metaphor of this pandemic as a war against coronavirus has been used, and the courage and duty demonstrated by all those working with those infected is the same as going into battle. Many will have seen their friends fall ill. Some will have seen their colleagues die, and they will have headed back into the danger zone day after day. I know there will be disagreements during the course of this debate, but I also know that every member of this House will want to express their gratitude and humility in the face of such service. And all will agree that despite the difficulties, we must ensure that all frontline workers in this crisis have the equipment they need to keep them safe. We are all aware of the challenges. We are all aware of the efforts being made, but that is irrelevant. We must and we will do what is necessary. I also want to thank those volunteers who have stood up to help care and health services. These include individuals who are facing the prospect of losing their jobs or financial hardship or worries about relatives. Instead of devoting themselves to their own needs or those of their family, they have gone into care homes, into medical wards, into Nightingale hospitals to serve their communities, often having to separate from their own loved ones to do so. Over 3 million additional volunteers stepped up. We should also thank those critical workers who have carried on so that we could all be fed, protected and provided for. The supermarket and the store, the police and fire services, post office workers, public transport workers, cleaners, prison officers, refuse collectors, pharmacists, teachers, nursery workers, public servants, especially those in the resilience forums, and of course our armed forces, who have delivered aid to those being shielded, brought testing to communities and providing planning expertise at every level of this response and in every LRF in the land, all while carrying out their other duties to protect the nation. They have taken risks for all our sakes. In the last few months, we have seen so many people and organisations rally, from the businesses who adapted so swiftly to meet the needs of the nation, expanding services, altering their production lines, generously donating equipment and expertise, and those others who managed to keep their businesses going throughout this ordeal in order that they could provide for our families and support our public services. We must remember that without the wealth they generate, we cannot fund the services we all rely on. We have been right to provide an unprecedented level of support to retain jobs and help cash flow. 25,000 loans, 500,000 firms furloughing workers, 600,000 grants. And we must do all we can as a government and all of us as citizens to get Britain back to work and start the recovery, as my right honourable friend the Prime Minister has set out. We've seen charities, faced with their fundraising plans in tatters, lead the local response, and of course the public, who have followed the requests of the Chief Medical Officer in staying at home. It has been tough, especially for those in cramped housing with no gardens, but they've done it, and thanks to them, R is now below 1. In the next phase of the response, we must all continue to demonstrate that resolve. And in all of those steps, and all of the issues that colleagues will raise in this debate, I know we will be more successful if we tackle them together. Cross-party, across the administrations of the United Kingdom, as we continue to do so, with international cooperation, and across all sectors, public, private, and the third sector, no longer deterred by dogma, just pulling together, just focusing on what needs to be done. In that spirit, in opening this debate, it affords me an opportunity to thank all members of this House who joined the Cabinet Office daily calls at the start of the pandemic. They were cross-party. They were constructive. We helped each other to help our constituents. We shared our ideas, cut down workloads. We supported each other. The information gathered on PPE, on care homes, on businesses, on operational matters was incredibly helpful to every department. And we should continue to work together to tackle the challenges but also seize the opportunities. Opportunities to tackle problems that were previously almost impossible. For example, since the start of this crisis, 90% of rough sleepers are now in accommodation. They are safe and secure. There will never be a better opportunity to wrap the services those individuals need around them whilst we deal with the crisis. So we must. It is dark times, Madam Deputy Speaker, but illuminating times too. We have reminded ourselves, as a country, what we can do when we're united in a mission. Millions of us chose not to curse the dark, but to light a candle. The British people have given us a beacon of hope in the days ahead.